Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. It's great to see so many of you here again for another talk in our GenAI seminar series. Today's speaker is Dr. Hazel Farrell. So Hazel is the academic lead for GenAI at the South East Technological University and is also chair of SETU's GenAI Steering Committee. Her work focuses on supporting educators and learners through frameworks and tools and training that enable meaningful AI integration in higher education. So very much the kind of stuff, I believe, that she's going to be talking to us about today. Hazel led the National N-TUTOR GenAI N3 project or initiative, which featured in the well-known EDUCAUSE Horizon report, and she was recently the recipient of the DEC Conference Digital Educator Award. Hazel and Ken McCarthy, who's with us as well, just this month released a Manifesto for generative AI in higher education, which I suppose pulls together the various different principles and themes that keep coming up in the workshops and the conversations and the wider discussions the two of them have led and have participated in. It's well worth a look, and we might post a link to that in the chat in a moment. Okay, in terms of format, we're going to go for something like 40 to 45 minutes presentation as usual, and then a bit left over for questions and discussion. As usual, those of you not attending live and just watching the recording will only get the presentation bit. So colleagues, you can post questions to the Q&A area in Zoom, and as before, you can upvote the questions of others. And I think there's a bit of a Vevox poll is going to be part of today's presentation as well. So look, I know you're very busy, Hazel, and in high demand, so thank you very much for accepting my invitation to do this talk for us. Over to you.
Thanks, Gerald. Absolutely delighted to be here, and you're very welcome, and thank you for giving your time to come and listen to me today. Right, let's get sharing. Okay, so today I thought I'd do something that is a little bit different, I suppose. I wanted to stand back and give a broad overview of what's been going on and just really sort of survey the landscape from my perspective. And some of it you may be able to identify with, and some of it you may not. Very quick insight into who I am. So I'm coming from a creative background, specifically music, and I was always into student engagement initiatives, and that's what brought me to technology enhanced learning. So when AI came along, I thought, yeah, okay, this absolutely fits what I'm trying to do here in terms of getting students involved in their learning journeys. So I'm what you call one of these early adopters, and I took it straight into my classroom and started playing around with the AI with my students, because I felt like having those open conversations from the start would work best for my sort of ethos and approach to pedagogy. So got in there straight away with the students, and it just really built from there, because once you start experimenting yourself, I feel your next job is to share what you've learned and allow others to benefit from your mistakes and your successes. And that's where all that, the communities of practice conferences and things like that, that's where that comes into it. I was very fortunate to lead the national network, as Gerard referred to, and we've revived our network now more organically in the absence of N-TUTOR funding, but we do still have a strong network going there, and we're working on getting some really nice shared outputs, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. After that, I took on the role of academic lead for GenAI within our own university, and as part of that, then I look after the steering committee and different initiatives we have here. So that's just a quick overview. Then overviewing the whole AI and education journey as well. These are not necessarily, in any specific order, but this is how I felt the journey unfolded. So first of all, we were just trying to understand, what is this all about? What are the basics? What does this mean? And we're still grappling with that to a certain extent. Then, as I referred to earlier there, the integration began. So start to bring it in and say, okay, what can I do with this? Let's push it around and see if I can get some good out of it. Let's learn from it. And then that's where the evaluation came into it. Then start sort of evaluating what you're after doing and identifying the issues, the challenges, and so on, but also the opportunities. So then here we started to set up these working groups, and I'm sure it's the same in other universities, that different internal and external groups started to emerge where people were very interested in AI. And then we started to develop resources and roll them out to help our learners and indeed our fellow educators. And then the professional development came along, which is still, being developed more and more. And the thing about this is it's all iterative. We have to keep redoing. And, I remember at a conference when somebody made the comment that they didn't need to do the AI training because they did it last year. And we were having a little giggle about that, because it all keeps moving on. So we do need to keep refreshing the training, and we need to keep adapting to what comes along. Then we saw lots of case studies in different types of formats, like journal articles, book chapters, all sorts of different formats. So we could learn from good practice from other people, really. And the development of guidelines and frameworks, I specifically stuck with guidelines and frameworks because we steered away from policy. Because as we know, policy development is a really lengthy process in the educational system. And the technology was really just outpacing the process. So that's why guidelines are something that were a lot more flexible, and, frameworks that could be adapted quicker. And then we got sort of little funding initiatives like SATL funding and the N-TUTOR funding. We refer to support little projects and things. Hot topics. This is definitely not exhaustive, but I just put them together because these are recurring themes that keep coming up, that people are concerned about. And I'll discuss some of them in more detail later. But the one I wanted to just highlight here, and one that we possibly don't pay enough attention to, is the one about workload and well-being. Because when we think about it, there's so much happening here. Our landscape has totally changed. AI is permeating everything that's going on. But yet, we're still trying to cope with our heavy workloads and adapt and integrate and change and redevelop and redesign. And that impacts on people's well-being. And we've got that message very, very clearly from any of our workshops, our initiatives that we run here. So looking to SETU, what we did is we had a working group, and it was a group of enthusiasts that we used to come together, and everyone was saying, oh, did you see this? Oh, did everyone look at what I discovered? Look at whatever. But there was no direct line to academic council, and we actually weren't achieving very much because it was a talking shop really for enthusiasts. So we did achieve, sort of the establishment of staff and student hubs and some resource development and some early guideline development. And, silos of good work, this is a familiar scene, I think, to most of us. We were rolling out training and things like that and running some community of practices, but there was a distinct lack of coordination. And this is the early response I'm talking about here. And also a lack of resourcing, because all of this was happening, drawing on people's goodwill. And also, we sort of recognized the need to have a robust communication and implementation strategy, because it's very difficult to actually get people on board. And I'm not talking about getting people around to my way of thinking or anyone else's way of thinking, getting them on board in terms of informing themselves and then making their own decision about whether this is right for them or not right for them, So we did all of these things here. We were using every channel possible to get the messaging out there about our guidelines and about good practices and training people could do. We did so many different things. But we still felt that actually we weren't where we wanted to be in terms of the level of engagement across our university community. So this is our Vevox here, if you don't mind. I'm just throwing out a question. Why do you feel that all of that stuff wouldn't be enough? Hitting all the different lines of communication, putting everything out there, putting training in place, developing guidelines, putting up staff hubs, so why do we think that actually still is not enough? So if you don't mind just scanning the QR code, and I think the link was in the chat there as well, maybe. So we have responses coming in here, and I'm just going to drag that across onto the screen in a second. I'll just give it another few seconds. Okay. Right, I'm dragging this across here now, and we'll have a little look. I'm going to start showing results on that one. Okay, not enough time, fear of the unknown, confusion. Not enough time is actually a really good one. Confusion. And I'm guessing confusion is in terms of the messaging that's out there, but it could possibly be in terms of the amount of information that is coming at you, because every day when you look at AI, there's new stuff that, and there's more policies or more guideline documents, there's more frameworks, and you're thinking, what should I actually be engaging with? So, okay, time is coming up as a big one there. Always changing, censored discussion, information overload, fear of the unknown. So you can see there yourself what the general thinking is. A stigma, scary. Okay. Time is still coming up as our biggest factor here. All right, too many to choose from, information overload, fear of doing it wrong. Yep, too much to choose from, and time again. Okay, I'm going to just drag that one back out of there, and we will share this. What I'll do is I'll screenshot the responses into the presentation for Gro to share with you later. So I'll just pull that back out of there now, and we'll get back in here. Okay. All right. So what I did was a little brain dump, really. And this is a messy slide, and no graphic design awards will be coming to Hazel. But these were the things that occurred to me. We have genuine concerns about environmental impact, and there's lots of information and contrasting information and messaging about that actually at the moment. We've got our digital divide, which has been intensified. We have staff who are not even confident using, basic technology, and then all of a sudden they're, thrown into this world of AI where they're drowning and they're not feeling good about it. And that's this overload here. Head in the sand as well. We still have people who feel that, look, I don't need to change anything I'm doing, that I'm okay. And resourcing, the time is there. And also I put in Mr. Sisyphean here. This is the Sisyphean task of pushing the rock up the hill, where it's just ongoing. We have to keep redoing everything that we do over and over again. And that can be very daunting actually for people. Then I'm looking here also at AI enhanced universities. So there's lots of challenges. And here, look, it's multifaceted. It's not actually just about teaching and learning at all. It's to do with our operations, all the behind the scenes things. It's to do with our research. It's to do with everything, really. The resourcing I've put in here again, and I will keep saying resourcing, because there's an expectation for us to respond meaningfully to these challenges, but I have yet to see a good model where we have strong resourcing behind it to actually enable that, and goodwill. Again, I'm repeating that goodwill seems to be how we're managing at the moment. Although there do seem to be some new appointments where people are getting certain time allocations and things to dedicate to AI. But even with that, it's very, very difficult. Expertise, I always do this. I stick it in inverted commas because I just deny the use of the term expertise when it comes to AI, simply because it's changing so often, and that if you think you're really good at something today, you turn it on tomorrow and actually there's a whole heap of new features and it's changed again. So it's difficult to claim expertise in this, and I'd be quite skeptical about anyone who is claiming to be an AI expert, because I don't feel you could be. Regulation then, yeah, we're struggling with all of this, because we're just thinking, okay, because it impacts so many different things, we need to juggle this to allow people enough freedom within their own discipline areas, within their own faculty areas. We need to balance that with giving institutional advice. So the whole university putting out guidelines, but then you have somebody in a specific discipline saying, well, actually, that's totally irrelevant to what I do every day. So it's very challenging. And the rest of it here, you can see yourself that these are all familiar. These are all familiar themes. Case study, I put in here about the GenAI N3 one, simply because this is an example of where we got together 7 different technological universities, and we decided, well, you know what? There's no need for us all to be doing the same thing. Why are we wasting our energy by duplicating work? Why don't we just get together, come up with a solid work plan, and we'll create all open resources that would be of benefit to the entire community. And we also were able to draw on a multidisciplinary team where we had different levels of now expertise here. I'm using in a different way. Expertise here is that we had graphic designers, we had pedagogy experts, we had postgraduate specialists, we had people that were instructional designers. So we were able to bring together lots of different skill sets and people coming from diverse disciplines to the table, and we could develop resources and supports meaningfully that we could then take back to our own institutional communities. And it helped in creating impact because we had that collaborative ethos going on. And I put in here the Higher Education Policy Institute in the report about the survey they did, and I'll show you that in a second here. This was in the summation that we basically need to look for opportunities to cooperate, that nobody can make those great strides on their own. We need to actually get together on it. And Hong Kong model, the same thing. So they decided they were going to get together instead of competing with each other. And I'll just mention that recently at the Council of Europe, they're launching a new AI compass for education. And there, I was invited there simply because of my work with a network of people. Nobody would be invited as an individual representing one single institution. Everybody who was invited to present was representing a collaborative initiative. So I think that that's really what we're looking for, is that the collaborative ethos. Okay, so these are just some of the things we achieved in a very short space of time because it was at the end of the N-TUTOR project. So in a short space of just a few months, we were able to do all of these things simply because we worked together. And it involved developing hubs, rolling out frameworks, online courses, AI play workshops where we were able to provide a template that we all worked from and then adapted it to suit different needs, developing infographics, crowdsourced book, all of that type of thing. So lots and lots of stuff going on there. And the alarm clock is down at the bottom to just remind us that it was a few months, very short few months where we were able to achieve this. And these are some of the outputs. I put them in here simply so you would have links to things. So I'm not going to talk through these. What happened next? The money ran out for N-TUTOR. But what did happen then was within SETU, our president decided that, well, Hazel, we would like you to continue the project from internally. And they developed this role of academic lead for GenAI. So I sort of transitioned to that. And also we disbanded our AI working group, which was just the big mishmash of enthusiasts, and sat down at a table, and our president and VP were able to look at the different function areas and identify individuals strategically. So somebody from the computer services side of things, academic people, research people, people representing academic integrity and ethics, people representing the copyright and law side of it. So strategically, we put together a steering committee. And then from that, we've developed different working groups. So for instance, we've a library working group, research working group, we've a new student AI working group, and so on. So this was much better because we had a solid work plan that was agreed with the president and the VP that was working with us on that. And also we had a direct line to academic council as well. So that really started to make a difference because our work was recognised and it was being disseminated widely across the university in our hubs. The other thing we were doing is looking at other collaborations, and I have the Scottish AI National Network in there. So we're working with them, sharing resources, looking at staff mobilities and, shared events and things. So they have a collection of all their universities there working together, the same as we are with the GenAI N3 over here. So joining together to actually make more impact. I put some resourcing down here because We still don't have like a clearly defined budget, but all I can say is if I've asked for anything, I've got it so far, but I haven't pushed it too far either. The EDUCAUSE is there, the Horizon report, Garode mentioned that earlier on. So the GenAI N3 network was recognised as an example of good practice in that, which was something really nice for us. So look, I'm not going to really talk through this. The point of this slide is to show how firmly GenAI is embedded everywhere, today. So I made these lists. They're not exhaustive. There are loads more out there, but everything we turn on these days, our AI is just popping up, and we have our Grammarly. I'm a bit I don't know if I'm on board with they're renaming it Superhuman. Don't think I'm on board with that one, but they possibly don't care what my opinion is anyway. So, but by the way, the specialized ones I put in there because in each of our disciplines, there are also specialist tools and things like that are emerging that may be of benefit to us, our students. And I deliberately put in this AI generated little person down here, person, is that the right word? Playing some sort of random musical instrument, which is like resembling some sort of plumbing or whatever. But anyway, so also, we're saying it's very much integrated. We also have the proof, for this, because if we look at the Higher Education Policy Institute survey, the student use survey, it really is telling. The green is 2024 and the navy is 2025. And if you look at this in more detail later on, you'll see, there's 92% of students are actually using AI in comparison with 66% from the previous year. So like our students are very much engaging with this technology. I put in the QQI report. Now, this is not as, I think it's a smaller sample size. And in the report, they come out and they just say it's mainly the results of, 2 institutions who engaged with it. So it's not a full picture, but it does tell a similar story. And this is about how students are using AI. And, the statistics are pretty similar in terms of AI usage there. In assessments, you can see here lots of student use, and you can see the breakdown about what they're using it for. And also the worrying things are the bit about using AI without editing the outputs. So, students are admitting to that, and they're also using it in assessments after, or they're submitting work for assessment after editing it with AI as well. So these are students coming forward and saying, yeah, we're doing this. In academia, like look at, we've all seen these here, our University of Limerick. And I mean, that one, that went through several layers. That went through editors, it went through the whole lot and still managed to get out there with blatant AI use in it. And that's quite worrying, isn't it? When you're looking at reviewers, you're looking at editors, the whole lot, and still got through. And here about students demanding their tuition fees back after spotting ChatGPT generated content in their lecturers' notes. So you're familiar with these stories. My message is just to show how deeply this thing is embedded. And I'm looking at the word deeper. We're going to take another, and I use this purposely, deep dive into how it's embedded so much in our society. We possibly all came across this when we moved on to ChatGPT 5. We had a strong outcry in social media platforms and Reddit and things like that, where people were referring to GPT-4o as a friend, a therapist, to create a mother. These things are quite worrying to me, I have to say. This deep reliance and, the acknowledgement that actually technology in itself is addictive, but having that extra layer of potentially a person that's engaging with you and seeing it as a person, and a person who can actually guide you to do things that are possibly not healthy as well. We all know, we've all heard of these different cases. So as educators, then I'm asking you a question: can we actually really avoid AI, given all of this? Is it a thing? Can we avoid AI? How do we feel about that? I'll just give you a couple of seconds there on that one, and then we'll push it forward. Okay, I'll just pull that one across there so we can see. Okay, we're 100% no at the moment anyway. Yeah, 94%. Okay, somebody feels yes. That's good. That's interesting. Maybe. We've got a maybe creeping in there as well. All right. Okay, so maybes are getting a bit higher there. Okay, I'm going to drag that back out of there because I just wanted to give you a sense of what people were feeling in the room. Here we go. All right. So these are other people who are questioning it. Do we actually have a choice? So there's this open letter, which you may or may not be familiar with. There's 1,100 plus signatures on it right now. The link is there. You can click into that to have a look if you like. And it's about education professionals who are refusing to use AI. They're just rejecting it. And, there are valid grounds in there. Yeah, there are valid arguments about concern around well-being and concern about cognitive offloading and concerns about students and things like that. But you can have a look at that in your own time. And I just put in a couple of other articles. These are all current ones, really. So here's ones about AI killing off our jobs. And then the Ofsted report is telling us that the biggest risk is to do nothing. So these are just different opinion pieces that are out there. Okay, so with all of that in mind, in the QQI report, they did ask educators whether they felt it was important to teach learners how to use AI effectively. And you can see here that 63% are saying that actually, yes, it is extremely important. 24% are saying very important, and so on. AI literacy. So this is about the integration of AI. I put this in here for a specific reason. First of all, Yanis Glinovas, professor at Westminster, wonderful guy who's doing lots of great work with AI avatars. He's just calling it out and he's saying, okay, well, there's revolutionary changes happening here, mass market, AI powered tools. So if we're going to try to, upskill our students, we're going to actually have to do a bit of upskilling ourselves. So we need to react as well. We need to be proactive, actually. And then the AI literacy, I put this one in here, but I'm also throwing some questions out there around the terminology, because I've read a bit about this recently where people are questioning the terminology around AI literacy and what does it actually mean, and there's other terms being floated like AI competency and AI fluency. And at the recent Council of Europe event, they were sort of trying to position AI literacy as a three-part type of approach, where it's, yes, learning about the technology. Yes, it's learning about the practical application, but it's also focusing on that human-centered bit where we're making sure that the human is still fully, I suppose, at the center of any AI use, and that's talking about making sure that we still have a voice in what we're doing and not accepting, AI outputs as gospel, but also not accepting the fact that we all have to use AI for everything, because we certainly don't. Okay, this I really like. This is Leon Furs, and he's talking about 5 different ways to learn AI. Now, some of these are pretty self-explanatory, and this is a link. You can click on it and it'll take you off to the resource and you can look at it yourself. But I'm sort of honing in on the last two, the learning without AI, which is self-explanatory, but also the learning against AI. So the learning against AI is about that critical piece where you're actually challenging it. And you're saying, is this actually the best way to go about things? And, you're looking at those sort of evaluation approach, you're finding faults, you're pushing back and so on. So they're just a few little bits there to think about yourselves. So look, no matter how we feel about it, I think we are in a position where AI is everywhere. And again, I suppose it's our responsibility to accept that fact, but then make our decisions based on that. And I think moving from this sort of adoption into transforming it is about us taking hold of it, and shaping that narrative and making sure that we are aligning it with our principles, I suppose both personally, but also our broader principles within our universities. So these are sort of a few pathways. This is a little framework. I suppose we're all getting sick of frameworks at this stage. But anyway, here's another one. Pathways, maybe, rather than framework. And I'm going to go into each one in detail, so I'm not going to discuss them too much here. But look, we're talking about making sure that there is a solid vision or plan, that we know what it is we want here. And we know where we want to go with it, and then making sure we have a structure in place to be able to enable that. And I'll move on here now, and I'll just have a little chat about each one of those. But the vision and governance, it's about making sure we have that buy-in from our leadership, because it's fine, Hazel, deciding in my little corner at the university that, I really want to do this and I believe strongly in it. But for impact, you're going to have actually have everybody on board. And I suppose everybody is not the right word. We need to have a solid structure where we can actually create impact with what we're doing. And the thing about me deciding to do something off in my own little corner somewhere means that students are getting sort of mixed messages, and they're listening to me saying one thing, they're listening to Garode saying a different thing, and someone else. So I really feel that coordinated approach is important. And it's not only about getting the leadership buy-in, which all, and sort of tied into that is resourcing from leadership and time allowances and things like that. But it's also having the space to actually try things out and fail, The second thing I'm talking about is policy and ethics. So having those guidelines and then moving to policy development when we're ready to do that, have the time to do it, but to make sure that we've got transparency, inclusivity, and all of the rest of that around it. And the clear communication is the massive piece in this, really. Capacity building, we're all trying to do. And there's lots and lots of training that's been rolled out everywhere. We can see that, both online and in our own institutions and all the rest of it. And sharing our knowledge, making sure that we're empowering others. And I'm very much about empowering others, giving them the confidence to be able to go back and make some informed decisions, even if it's for one small little thing, just starting with one small thing. And to help people to do that is very important. Building our infrastructure and the equitable access is really important. And like, for instance, we were chatting a tiny bit earlier about how Copilot, has popped up everywhere if you're a Microsoft institution, which we are. But then there's a whole heap of confusion because it's not obviously the fully integrated Copilot model. It's this Copilot chat. And there's a lot of confusion around this. But I do know that there is the education rate, I think, coming online on the 1st of December for Copilot. So maybe that's a decision your institution will make. But it's necessary that the decisions are made so the correct guardrails are in place to protect our students and staff and so on. Okay, the other things I have here, I'll talk about the program and module integration in a second. And again, just questioning, is it necessary? Then here about evaluation and impact. This is about the iterative process where we're gathering data, we're analyzing, the results, whether they're survey results, whether they're metrics coming in from different things, and we're using those to inform our decision making as we move forward and as we scan the horizon. This horizon scanning, I think, is important because we do need to be looking forward. And you may argue that, sure, how can we tell what's going to happen? You can't tell in all the fine detail, but you can have a broad sort of perspective on it, I think, and try to prepare as much as you can. And that comes into the whole risk assessment area as well within our universities. This one here is what I'm working on at the moment internally. And it's about how we're actually going to get this integration to happen. And this is what we're sort of putting forward. I'm not saying everyone is going to agree with everything here, or I'm not saying we're going to achieve everything, but this is a bit of a plan. So it's about consulting with faculty heads. So we're going to start with faculty level and just get them to consider what it is they want. what is their vision, the principles for their particular faculty. Then we're going to try and align it with our programmatic review process, because we're thinking if we're changing practices around AI integration and assessment design and things like that, the best time to do it is when we're under review anyway, because we're going to be looking at everything. Whether or not that will happen, I don't know, but it's what we see as a logical step. And let's see where that goes. Then it's about identifying needs of staff. What do they need to be able to come from an informed perspective? And then the integration zones and the non-integration zones. So are there specific disciplines where AI is not actually appropriate, to be able to identify these and take different approaches? And then we move to program level, where we ask our program teams to audit their modules and their assessments and have a look and see, basically, how are they in terms of resilience to AI threats or AI threats to integrity and things like that, and then have a little look at diversification. So you're coming from a broader perspective rather than one person trying to change things on their own. And you can see here, we're also talking about having champions in place and then a direct pathways back into steering committees and faculty groups and things like that. It's ambitious. Don't know if we're going to achieve all of this, but it's our plan. Okay, collaborative. I just put this in here to make sure, and I know we are, but as leaders, we do need to actually try and branch out and make sure that we have a balance here. We have the multidisciplinary approaches. We're speaking to industry experts. We're talking to our students. Students, really important to have their voice in this. And that's sectoral collaboration, where we're working together with our different institutions and then broadening it out internationally. Just coming to the end here, I wanted to put this one in here. Garode mentioned our manifesto. The QR is there, and you'll have the link here. So we recently put this out through GenAI N3, and myself and Ken did a lot of work on it. And Sue Beckingham, indeed, who I think is on the call, was one of our reviewers, and we really appreciate her input into this. So we've put this out here with lots of different statements, provocative statements in some cases, some aspirational statements, and some statements as to where we feel we're at. And they're meant to be changed, challenged, used, adapted. And we'll have some workshops and things coming out on that. And we also have a launch with Professor Mike Sharples and Sue at the end of this month. We can share the details. So that's a new resource that's out there for you. And it's a starting point for conversations, to get people involved, to write little blogs, to, just think about AI really. So I leave that sitting where it is. All right, so just the end here is, we can't actually predict what's going to happen, but we can actually lead it by informing ourselves, by making decisions that we feel sit with our moral compasses, and by drawing from core documentation that's out there, and just really keeping engaged, I suppose, with the whole thing. So we don't need to be experts, but we do need to be thoughtful, strategic, and human-centered. Human-centered is something that's very much emphasized in the European narrative, and also about leading with purpose, values, and humanity. Okay, so that's me, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. I shall stop my screen share now.
That was fantastic, Hazel. Thanks so much. So look, we're going to stop the recording now. But for the sake of the recording, and in case I don't get a chance later, I'm just going to say thank you very much for what really was such a practical and engaging talk. I think your own deep engagement with GenAI and with all those stories and public concern with GenAI and the work you've done and all those conversations that you've had with educators and leaders, I think all of that really shone through there, and made it a very, very valuable and a very useful presentation. So thanks again there, and great to have the link in there for the new manifesto and that offer of engagement. So we'll say goodbye now to those watching the recording at this point.